So I'm just going to start with the schedule. So we're going to keep to time and finish at 11. I believe there was a bit of a mistake in the reminder that might have said for some people 3 hours, but we're going to stick to 2 hours. So we will be done by 11. We're going to have a short 10-minute break about halfway through, and we're going to have small group discussions so that everyone can get to know each other. We can still make the most of the networking opportunity. And so I'll make sure that you're in different groups so you get to meet different people. So I'm just going to quickly go over the learning outcomes for today. So we're going to focus on what I will explain as a cultural lens or cultural bias and what that means and how we can identify our own cultural lens. We're going to talk about opportunities to improve cross-cultural communication skills, and we're going to do some scenarios so that we can actually put these things into practice as well. So the first thing we're going to do is a breakout room. It's always good to know other people in the room, even if it's virtual. And I want you to get to know each other. So what we're going to do to start off is a breakout room. So how that works is I am going to put you into rooms. The Zoom will automatically take you to another virtual room where you will be with 2 or 3 other people. And we're going to have a short discussion. I'll let it go for about 7 minutes, and then I will bring you back into the main group. So what I want you to do is to introduce yourself and share the meaning of your name, and if you have any nicknames and what your preferred name might be. So we're going to start off with this. So I will put you into the rooms now. So it'll automatically do it. You don't need to do anything. Welcome back, everyone. So I'll just remind you to just go back onto mute just to limit any background noise, please.
So how do I do that?
So you should see in the bottom left-hand corner, there'll be a little microphone symbol.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Just click on that.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, no, wrong. Oops.
There you go. I've done it for you. Okay. Oh, good, Irene. I've done it for you. Thank you. So I just wanted to do that so people can get to know each other, and also just to start a bit of a warm up into thinking about culture and what comes with that, and the meaning of names is something that's always nice when you've got people from different backgrounds. It's something that, you know, everybody can come together and share, and it's something that I find is a really good icebreaker as well. Just if you're ever doing a group activity, it's one that's really good when you're working with cross-cultural groups. So I'm going to move on to defining culture, and there's lots of research and lots of great resources on this, but I'm not going to get too academic on everyone because we want it to be practical, and I won't go into too much depth on theory, don't worry, but just starting off with a definition of culture, just to remind us. So culture is a way of thinking and living where we pick up a set of attitudes, values, and beliefs. And these norms and things that we see as our truth are reinforced by other people in the group. That might be family, community, might be religious groups, might be your country. So members of a culture identify that they share a similarity. So as I said, it could be geography, race, ethnicity, and culture influences the words we speak and our behaviour. So when we talk about cross-cultural communication, we're talking about when we're communicating to someone who is from a group different to our own, or it could be, you know, multiple kind of things that are different. In a work situation, for example, you're going to get lots of different people from different backgrounds. It could be the person that you're volunteering with. It could be people even in your family. There can be cross-cultural differences. So that's when we have any differences in styles of working, age, can be sexual orientation, gender, and it can also um, be non-verbal as well. So cross-cultural communication often, we think of those non-verbal cues when it comes to cross-cultural communication, like eye contact or distance between people. So this can be body language and gestures and ways that we try and communicate in non-verbal ways as well. So I asked you all what some of the common challenges are when you think of cross-cultural communication. And it was interesting. There were a lot of common themes. And the one that came up the most was language, because that's, a really strong one that we often find that it's challenging when we speak a different language, because it's harder to get that communication, that direct communication, and that confirmation that we understand what we're hearing. But I also found that people were talking the words like perceptions and sensitivity and religion came up a lot as well. And this is because religion is something that we can have strong reactions to, and something that we know values and worldviews are based on sometimes. So it's something that everybody, I can imagine, is quite sensitive to, because it's something that might be very important to you, or is important to someone else. And when we communicate with someone across cultures, we want it to be successful, and we want it to be a positive experience, and we don't want to offend people. And I think that's why religion comes up, because it's something that can be really challenging to talk about when people come from different religions and different views, because it can really shape some of those major values that we have. So these are some of the things that people brought up, and it was useful for me, because that was I wanted to make sure I used scenarios and examples in this training that were going to be relevant for what you found to be challenging, or what you thought of when you thought of cross-cultural communication. So some common causes of miscommunication when we're talking about working with different cultures. So assumptions, and we're going to unpack assumptions a lot today, because it's looking at ourselves and our own assumptions and our own cultural lens, and what do we think are universal rules of behavior that might not actually be that way. And everybody does this. So when we talk about cross-cultural, it's about everyone. Like, everybody has the opportunity to improve and work on these skills and to reflect, because we all come with our own perceptions and ways that we see the world. And some of us might be better at recognizing our own assumptions better than others, but I'm going to teach you how you can improve that. And it's something that everybody can always improve. It's one of those lifelong learning exercises when we talk about cultural communication. So language differences, which is what everybody kind of related to as well in the question that I asked. Non-verbal misinterpretation is really common as well, and those preconceptions and stereotypes. So I want to spend a lot of time today focusing on how you can identify your cultural lens. So this is really important for successful communication, because it's about how you can actually understand your reactions, your views, and how you take in information, how you hear, and how you speak and how you communicate generally. So this includes values like how you think the world should be, how people should act, talking about interacting with money, family, relationships, power, and gender roles. These are really important things to be aware of about yourself when you're communicating with other people from other cultures and people in general. And one thing that I really want to try and make, I suppose, clear or to stand out is that while these beliefs and values are really personal, you don't have to change them. It's just about being aware of them so that when you're interacting with other people, you're aware of how you might react and how you might react to different beliefs and values. And this can really help us in checking in with any sort of reactions we're having to something, or you know, when or some you're talking to someone and they seem to be having a strong reaction to something you're saying, the more reflective you can be on yourself, the better you're going to be at communicating across cultures. And it's important not to come in with judgment. That's something that we all do as humans, is we do go in and we judge things against what we know to be normal or to be true. So it's really, really good practice to reflect on what your own assumptions are with this, which can be challenging. And some people, you know, might do that a lot. Other people might not have had that opportunity before. And in your volunteering role, this might be the first time you're doing this kind of reflection on your own culture, or you might be experienced. We'll get to share with each other and learn where we're at later on. But the way to actually identify your cultural lens is to interact with other people. So with Australia, we're very multicultural and we get the opportunity to do this all the time. So, in the workplace, in social engagements, we're, in my opinion, really lucky that we get to actually be exposed to so many different cultures. And of course, for people who have had the opportunity to travel to other countries and to other areas in the world, you will know what it's like to reflect on your own culture when you become the minority, or when you come across a culture that is very different to yours, different ways of acting and talking and working, for example. So what we will do is we'll be doing some activities that help you to that introduce you to this idea of reflecting on your own actions and reactions, I suppose. And in order to become a good cross-cultural communicator, you really need to be willing to have an open mind and change your actions and ideas. So this is really different to changing your values and beliefs. And I just want to highlight that you don't need to change your values and beliefs, but you need to be able to reflect on how you react, how you interact with other people, and the assumptions you make. That's very different to changing your values and beliefs. And I just want to point that out. So I just want to quickly talk about an example of a previous role that I had when I was asked to, I guess, intervene in a situation. So I was employed by the University of Newcastle as their equity and diversity coordinator. So my role was to work with students and staff on any issues that arose around diversity, and often it was sort of the more pointy and like things like racism, and there were things that I was working on to try and make the university a more diverse and inclusive environment. So I worked on policies and procedures, but I often was asked to get involved in, I suppose, conflict management. One of an example I want to share with you is an experience I had when I was asked to work with the University Chaplaincy Centre, or the Multi-Faith Centre. So the university was very diverse. We had a lot of students from a lot of different backgrounds. We had lots of students coming in who were Muslim. And we wanted to make sure that we had safe spaces and prayer spaces for everyone. And we also wanted to have chaplains. So in case you don't know, a chaplain is someone who is a community religious leader, could be formal, could be informal, and they come in to workplaces or universities and offer some guidance for people who are spiritual. So chaplain is a very kind of Anglo word, like I suppose it's associated with Christian religion a lot more, but there's, it could be just a spiritual leader or advisor. So I was asked to come in because there was a need to have a leader from the Muslim community. So we had, there was a Newcastle Muslim Association. So we invited them to put forward some names of volunteers who might come and offer that support to students. And so part of the process was to consult with the other existing chaplains. So we had approximately 20 volunteers from different denominations of Christian churches. So they were representative of what they considered to be quite diverse. So we had Catholic and we had Baptists and we had, like Hillsong and lots of different types of the Christian church or religion. So for them, they were feeling very diverse, which is great. And they had lots of different students that related to them, but there wasn't anyone for our Muslim students. So what we wanted to do is bring in someone from that community. So what had happened, which led to me being involved, is they wanted to have a panel of 15 people to interview the one Muslim representative. And they were actually really excited. They just wanted to be involved. But what was happening was there was a miscommunication because of the cultures, and the individual who was from the Muslim background was seeing, for them, 15 people from the one religion wanting to interview them, and it was very confronting and it was very full on. But for them, they just saw themselves as 15 different unique representatives of their own church or culture. But my role was to come in and try and unpack this. So we had a meeting, not with everyone because that was too many people, but we had a meeting with a number of them. I think there were about 5 people. And what my role was to actually just bring out why people were feeling, why was there with this misunderstanding. And so what I was suggesting was that 15 people was too much. That's a lot. These were all volunteers. Can you imagine going for an interview with 15 people on the panel? And you're from, in Newcastle, the Muslim community is a lot smaller than the Christian community. So they were feeling like unwanted and like this was too much. So what we did was we had a meeting and we unpacked what was going on there. And then we were able to actually overcome this misunderstanding, because actually the Christian chaplains were really excited to finally, they'd been advocating to have someone from the Muslim community. So when they expressed that, it was easier for that individual from that, in this case, the other group, to then understand that there was no bad kind of feelings, or they wanted them to be involved. But what had happened was they came in with what they thought was a normal process of having everybody involved in an interview panel, when in fact that made that person feel unwanted and feel really exposed and really othered. So that was a really interesting experience for me, and it was a really good outcome because they ended up staying for a long time, seeing a lot of students. So they came on board and they felt part of the team. And then they were able to change that process of having so many people on the interview panel and actually understand that for some people coming in, that didn't look like diversity. It looked like, and then that they were able to explain that they were from different parts of the Christian church and what that meant and how they represented different students. And so they were able to overcome that misunderstanding. But it was a really interesting experience for me, because it was actually getting quite hostile, and there were there were feelings that this wasn't going to work, but we were able to overcome them because we were actually able to get past those assumptions and those biases that everyone was holding, and get to a point of I suppose, where it was working and they could collaborate and they could exist in the same space and serve the student body, which was really good. But it's always interesting to have these kind of experiences where you see what can, on the surface, it can seem really hard to actually, you know, I suppose, get through and to understand. But often it's just these assumptions and misunderstandings that we need to get through in order to reach the goal that we're trying to do, which is to build a relationship and to actually serve the community, in our case, when we're volunteers. So we're going to do an activity, and I don't know how diverse our answers will be, but we're going to talk about if you wear shoes inside the house. And so you're going to go into rooms. I will try and put you in different rooms this time so you can meet other people. And we're going to discuss the topic, is it okay to wear shoes inside the house? And if someone walks into your house and keeps their shoes on, how do you feel? And do you say anything? And then we're going to share back. So we're going to go into the rooms again. And then we'll just be quick to keep to time. So I'll probably go 7 minutes again, and then we'll share how this conversation went, and we'll see from there. So I'm just going to put you into some rooms. I'm just going to move people around a little bit. Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Okay. Who would like to share and reflect on their discussion on shoes inside the house?
I'll go, Lauren, if you like, from group
Thank
one.
you.
So we had a really interesting discussion, and 3 out of the 4 said shoes off would be most likely the way. And we discussed whether it was cultural or whether it was cleanliness, keeping carpets clean. And we didn't really unpack that too much, except that there are the 2 aspects. There's wanting to keep the floors clean, and there's also we do it because it's a cultural norm. It was interesting that one of the participants pointed out that if the kids are trained that way, you really don't need to do anything because the kids are going to tell people to take their shoes off. And also having the shoes outside indicates to people that it's a shoes off. And I suppose the most confronting thing that that the group came up with is when tradies come to the house. So, you know, tradies coming to the house, do they need to keep their shoes on because that's part of the WHS? Or do they need to, or do they, you know, not take their shoes off because it's an inconvenience? And some of them now are even putting covers over their shoes to resolve the cleanliness issue. So does that really meet the demands of the cultural side? So it was a very interesting conversation.
Is it cultural or respect?
Well, yes, there's a good point.
Who else wants to share? Who was in group 2? Thanks, Helen.
I can't actually remember what group I was in, but I might go for our group.
Okay.
For us, what we must have been on the same wavelength because we had the exact same understanding of, you know, there's that cultural aspect in cleanliness, which can be two different things of why people take their shoes off or leave them on. We also acknowledge that it does derive from your prior experiences. So if you grew up in a household with that and you bring that in, or if you have had a uncomfortable conversation or an awkward moment where someone's actually confronted you about it, but then also the tradie topic as well. So I think it's an interesting one. It's something that I think obviously now that we're talking about it, we'll be a lot more sensitive and aware of it. But unless you've had that experience, it probably doesn't. I grew up in Australia, but my mum's Chinese. So Chinese households, you always take your feet off. You always take your shoes off.
Feet off.
Feet off. Yep, that's it. But then, but yeah, it doesn't always. My partner's she's from Australia, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's just something to more be aware of now. I think that was the more takeaway now that we've discussed it.
I'm gonna challenge everyone with the thought, what if the concept of clean is cultural as well? As in, there's no universal definition of clean, it's just how we've been brought up. And that can vary between cultures as well. This is just, I love this example because I have been in situations where I've walked in with shoes and people have gone, okay, put them back on, like, and vice versa, like, you know, like take them off. Like it's an interesting one because it's something that's like, we have a reaction. Like if you don't want shoes in your house and someone walks in, sometimes you can't help, you just like, oh. And then another example that I find funny. So I am from a coastal town. So I will wear, and just because of my culture, my upbringing, I will wear shoes in the house and then sometimes go to Coles in summer with no shoes and go to the shopping center with no shoes on. And some people would be absolutely horrified by that. But for me, that's not unclean, or that's normal for me and my particular culture. So I find this one really interesting. Anyone else want to share what their group spoke about?
Yeah, I spoke to, I can't say her name right, I'm so sorry. Colleen and I think Cecily?
Cecily.
Sorry, Cecily, sorry. Yeah, basically, I for my preference, I don't care if anyone walks in or out of my place with shoes on. I know that like other places I go to, people leave their shoes near the door. But I like to I take my shoes off because I want my feet to breathe. That's it. But yeah, that's basically it.
I'll give you a classic example. I do a lot of voluntary work, and we were going into a meeting. This is pre-COVID, and somebody walks in with their shoes really stinking.
Yeah.
We found that he stepped on dog poop.
Oh, yuck.
Okay, now the thing is, not letting anybody or people realizing they shouldn't walk in with shoes is perfectly acceptable. And I would say, if you're coming into my house, take your shoes off, because I've got everybody's shoes are outside. It's cleanliness. It's a habit. You can also bring in culture as well, but then if you make it a good habit to leave it outside, then culture part doesn't come in. But you know, I always remember there's somebody walking in with dog poo under the shoes. And that sort of makes me cringe. I say, yeah, well, please take your shoes off.
And the other thing is chewing gum, apart from dog poo. Yeah.
That's right.
And so I guess with this example, I just want to highlight, you know, we all have our different beliefs and approaches to it. It sounds like we all have a lot of kind of similar ideas, but sometimes it's just like with this example, like a lot of us will ask, should I leave my shoes on or take them off? I actually say, can I leave my shoes on? Because I like to keep my shoes on. But if someone says to me, oh, please take them off, I have no problem with that. And I'm ready to do it. But so this is just one like example of how we can use this approach to all sorts of things within culture. And when you start to see things like that and you think, it's okay, I can take my shoes off, doesn't, you know, and like, I like to have my shoes on in my home, but I'm not going to change that, but I can take them off when I go to someone else's house. So just an example that I like to use because I think it's one that we all have our strong opinions on, which is interesting. And we often just take it for granted. So that's what I just wanted to highlight. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to take a short break. We're running on time, which I like. So we're going to take a 10-minute break. So please, if you want to have a coffee or a water, we're going to come back. Let's make it a 7-minute break so we can stick to time. So 10 o'clock we'll be back. So please, if you just want to turn off your camera and your microphone or get a drink, whatever you want to do, and we'll be back soon. Welcome back.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
Lauren.
most people back.
Lauren, I'm having difficulties. I can see other people, not everybody, but I can't get my screen back where I can see how to mute or unmute myself.
Okay.
And so when I suddenly went to safe driving mode suddenly, just during our last, near the end of our last breakout room. And so when I choose some different options, I'm just finding it that it looks like I'm about to go out of the meeting.
Okay. Oh, I think it just happened.
Oh, I think I just discovered, I actually just discovered the dots. And yeah, it's okay, thanks.
You've got it? Are you on a phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it can have different functions. Are you right now?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, no problem. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about self-reflection, which we've done already, but it's always a challenge because it's something, it's challenging to examine your own beliefs and reactions and things sometimes, but it's always good practice because it makes us a better communicator. It helps to improve the way that you can interact with people because you can understand how you're reacting to things, how you're communicating things, and it's always good to be self-aware. And some of us might be in roles or had jobs or volunteer roles where we do this a lot. Other people, this might be a new concept. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a definition. So when I talk about self-reflection, I'm talking about when you set time aside to really think about how your own beliefs and values, how your upbringing, how your community influences how you interact with other people. And this is something that's really important when you're volunteering because you're going to meet lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, and you're obviously all here today because you want to improve your skills, and as do I, and I always like to learn from other people, and that's fantastic that you're all here. So that is part of it. It's taking that time to invest in training, and it's also valuable to invest in that time to look at yourself and your reactions and your beliefs. So I want to give us the opportunity to talk about any specific examples of cross-cultural communication that you have, that you might have something that you've experienced or something that you think about. But is there anyone who would like to share a specific challenge or scenario that we can work together through as a group? I've definitely got examples, but I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to. So Cecily, did you have something? You've put your hand up in the icon there. Did you want to go first, and then Helen, I think, as well? Cecily? Oops, you're just on mute. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, because of I have an anxiety about being friendly to, for example, African men from cultures that I know or that I have, and I spent time in India, and it was very unacceptable to look men in the eye. But they could goggle and ogle as much as they liked. And so I realize I have a lot of rage about that, that oppression of women. And when I see, for example, African men, I think Sudanese migrants, I would like to be friendly, but I'm afraid to be, because I just don't want to give the wrong idea. But when people appear to me, it's my perception, you know, of suffering even, and of being so different in a community that my heart is torn. And so I don't know what to do.
Okay, thank you for being really open and sharing that. So just to make sure that I've kind of got your question or your statement, I suppose. So you feel some anxiety because you want to show someone that they're welcome in a community. You want to have a professional kind of or supportive relationship with people, but you're concerned that it might be misunderstood for something more personal. Is that?
Yeah.
So
I feel very comfortable with other cultures, and it's so lovely to engage. We have heaps of people from other cultures in Armidale, and the women are so open, but you know, and the young men, they're fine, but yeah, I just feel like there's this total wall up, and I just feel it's sad.
yeah. So I think there's two things
And
pardon?
sorry, with the men, it feels like there's a
yeah. So I guess there's two things that I might just unpack there. I guess one is you've obviously had an experience that's made you uncomfortable and led you to kind of like have this concern, which is very valid and very, you know, that's your experience. So I guess the first thing is finding situations in which you could get to know people in a way that's going to be safe for both people. We don't know why people, and I'm speaking for anyone, sometimes people might seem a certain way or they might behave in a certain way that makes you uncomfortable. That's always going to happen with humans from any culture. But I suppose if you can find so say, for example, I don't know what kind of opportunities there might be, but say you're at a volunteering or a community centre open day, just to give an example. You might want to find group situations where you can get to know and exchange your culture and your ideas. The only way to really overcome some of those anxieties is with positive experiences in environments that I guess both people feel safe to share, and perhaps those individuals that you've come across that are that you're thinking, I suppose the only way to learn is to get to know people and to understand their experience and what's happening, and for them to learn about you and how you feel, which can be really difficult without a relationship and without the right environment to do that. And we can definitely unpack that a bit more after, because it's quite a complex one. But I suppose what I want to talk about there is that idea of you've had an experience that is making you feel that perhaps a group of people might behave that way, but maybe they won't all behave that way, or maybe there's different things that in their life experience. And I guess it's multi-layered, because we're talking about a few things here. We're talking about sexism, we're talking about lots of different things. So it's a good example, because there's some deep beliefs in there, and you're being challenged, your beliefs and your values are being challenged by someone's behavior. That's hard.
Thank you. I've just had a realization, and I think verbalizing, especially in front of different cultures, is very helpful, because I know, because I engage a lot with people from other cultures, because I love people from other cultures, but I just realized that it's about my own personal feelings of rejection. If I'm friendly to someone and they reject that, or I get a response that, and then I feel I've done something wrong, and all number of things that I might feel. But so I've realized that if I want to be friendly, I'm going to be friendly, and just take that risk of feeling whatever comes back at me, and and just keep doing that. So thanks. I just feel like I've sorted it out in
That's a
just
great
reaching
reflection.
out. And
What a
you know,
perfect example of self-reflection. I'm glad that you shared, but it's hard, it's challenging, and look, sometimes it's okay not to interact with people as well. If you meet an individual from any culture that makes you feel makes you feel unsafe, or you know, anything like that, that's okay to call out and put boundaries for yourself as well. But I think what you've just done there and reflecting on your fears is amazing. So thank you for sharing that. Helen, was it Helen who wanted to speak next? Helen, yep.
So this was a situation for a colleague. So she's a finance teacher. She was taking a group of students in a finance class, and as they do in a finance class, they were face to face, and she wanders around the room and she gives people tips and hints on what they're doing, you know, virtually leans over their shoulder and gives them some instruction, as she does. And this particular day she was practicing as she would normally practice, and the next thing she's got a complaint, and a student complained that she had that the teacher had actually spoken in a manner that was inappropriate to him in front of females from his own community. So, and that was, and unfortunately complaints in our system stay on your record whether there's anything or not. So that it's a bit of a big deal if someone actually officially makes a complaint. This student went down the track of making an official complaint. It was all ultimately resolved, and she had offended him culturally. But I suppose my point is, how is she to know that?
Yeah, it's a great point, and we can't know, well, maybe if you dedicated your life to it, but it's unlikely you will learn every single cultural rule and norm about different groups, and individuals vary as well. So she can't know. But what I do sometimes, like if I'm working with a group, and it depends on the situation, you know, maybe that's not appropriate for her classroom, but you can kind of set up some, if you are working with a really diverse group of people, and you know that there are people who come from different cultures and might not experienced a multicultural environment before, you can talk about it. And this is something that, you know, I think is so important, and it's great that it's in the Australian curriculum for young people to learn. There's lots of opportunities for people to learn this, but it's just got to be talked about. It's got to be talking about how, you know, if there's something, it's a hard one because I don't know exactly what was said, and you know, was it something was it because, like, I don't know, was it pointing out that person made an error, or okay, whatever it was. Yeah,
probably Lauren, I'd have to say probably most likely, because that's how accounting is taught.
Yes.
You know, like
yes.
that equation there isn't correct. You need to do it this way.
Yeah.
What you just said to me, maybe, you know, so maybe in a briefing induction where we set up, try and establish what ground rules, rules sounds a bit heavy, but establish what forms of communication are going to be acceptable. You know, maybe that could have highlighted that there may have been an issue.
Yeah.
You know, typically we ask, before we share feedback with someone in a mixed group, we would ask, are you okay if I share this feedback in front of? And that's usually how it would go. I suppose my next issue around trying to raise that issue and get across that issue in advance would be, what if you've got students that have opposing?
Yeah. So I've got a good example of that. So when I have done training in the university setting before, what I would do is set up my training style, and I would say, this is how I'm going to, so for example, you could say, this is the teacher in our situation is going to be direct. If there are errors, we're going to discuss them. If you have any concerns with the way that I've spoken or anything that's happened, please come and see me at the end of class. So setting up the rule of what to do. So maybe that individual didn't know they could go to her. And so if you set up the channel of the communication first, that can help. So maybe in that person's experience, it's rude to go to that person and you go straight to make a formal complaint. So for example, you could set it up like saying, if you have anything that you're concerned about, please come and speak to me at the end. This is the way to report any dissatisfaction. So that's one way. And then that avoids that escalation, because when we talk about things with each other, we can learn. So then she could have gone, oh, okay, this is normal in our class, this is how I'm going to teach. It's okay. And then kind of like, she'll be more aware of that for next time. So explaining our own way of working. We don't have to change all the time. We can't suit everybody, but we can be clear in what we're doing and our intention. So, in the classroom, we're going to have interaction. I'll give feedback in front of everyone. So please be prepared for that. And if you have any concerns, come see me after, things like that. So setting up and not making the assumption that people know how to make a complaint in the way that we would like is a good way of thinking about it, I suppose. I've got lots of people with hands up. Jason, I think you were next. Thanks, Helen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. There's some great tips here. I've had the opportunity in the last week and a half through the organisation that I'm volunteering or now doing work placement for to contact quite a number of clients, specifically from 3 different cultures. There seems to be a particular trend. And this is by phone. I've probably contacted 30 or 40 people. And in perhaps half of those situations, I've been using the, is it ATIS, telephone interpreter service.
Yep.
And which is great, thrown in the deep end to learn that communication skill without speaking directly to the other person has been wonderful. But what I found myself thinking for the first few times I was doing it is that some clients from one particular culture, I found myself feeling, gee, they're being a little bit difficult, and they're being a little bit argumentative, and they're being a bit rude about it. But I don't know what they're saying. I don't know the complexities of the details between them and the interpreter. I'm only making my own presumptions based on the tone of their voice or the way they're communicating. So in the sense of self-reflection, the takeaway for me has been exactly that. I don't know what they're saying. It could be as simple as that these particular clients are seeking more clarification, or they want some more information that's not being communicated through that interpreter third party. So I've put myself in check a little bit to say, well, it's not very valuable for me to jump to conclusions and to therefore to have this little bit of negativity towards a particular cultural group as opposed to others who I'm using with the interpreter services. And just to understand that the very way that people from a different country or culture or language communicate may quite specifically have a different tone to the way I would communicate to others in the English language. So it's a really great learning experience, and I'm certainly getting a lot of takeaways from that myself to self-reflect upon and to help me to do that better and communicate better in the future with these clients.
Yeah, Jason, that's great. That's a great example. One thing you could try is when you've got the interpreter there, you could actually say, I feel like you're angry because you're raising your voice, and just are you angry? Or like just check in and say, because you're raising your voice, I feel like you're angry. Are you? And then see what they say, because then you'll know. You can ask, and then if they say no and they keep going, then okay, I've checked in, everything's fine. This is just how they're talking. Another thing I'd just highlight is interpreters are only supposed to literally translate between you two. So there shouldn't be any side conversations. And if you feel that's happening, you can say, sorry, can you please just interpret what I'm saying? You're allowed to do that as well.
Yeah, but I think the takeout specifically is that I'm feeling this.
Yes.
I won't say observing because I don't think it's correct. It's multiple instances from the same particular culture.
Yep.
So that would lead me to believe that it's not a case of anger or even asking if they're angry. It really is just a cultural thing and a tonality of their voice.
Yep.
Of the clients who are coming from that specific country.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely one. There's definitely people that I've met that I've like the volume is huge. You can, yeah. Or vice versa, it can be really quiet and that doesn't necessarily mean they're not engaged as well. So yeah, thank you. That's a great one. Thank you, Jason. I think we had Subhash, then Cecily.
Yes. I think it's very, very important because when I was when I was with White Ribbon Australia, I used to go around lecturing on domestic and family violence. Excuse me, I've got a sore throat. After one of my meetings, this female comes up to me and said, Subhash, look, I'm married. And I've got this situation, and she was very sheepish and she wasn't going to say it in front of people. So I said, look, at the break, we'll go to one corner of the room and we'll discuss it. What she said is that this leader of their religious organization had a habit of hugging all the women. And this particular person, she said that, and he gropes. I've told my husband not to do this, and he wouldn't believe me. I told my father-in-law, and he wouldn't believe it. He said, oh, he's a great man. He's a religious leader. So I said, well, it's very difficult in a situation where you don't get support from your own family. So what is it that's bothering you? Because I wanted it to come out from her rather than me telling her what to do. And she said, well, I feel very unclean and I feel I'm being disrespected. I said, exactly, that's the word I'm coming to. If you feel your respect is being denied and is being overridden or is being trampled on, tell him that you are like, and use the cultural thing, like say, you're like my father or grandfather, and I'm sorry, but I don't like what you're doing. See how that works. If it doesn't, you can stop going to this religious organization or just don't go and hug him, simple as that. But there are certain things, you see, the family should stand by their own family. And when it comes to any religious person or any person who's engaging in such disgusting activities, don't encourage them. But at the end of the day, if you don't get support, it's your self-respect, stand up. And that's the only thing I could say. And I felt very, very sorry for this young girl. They were newly married couple. And the husband was just yes or no, something like that, because he came to the class as well. And I had a word with him and I said, if you had a situation, what would you do? Without naming anybody at all. And he said, oh, I would be totally against that. And I said, well, look after your family.
Subhash, can I ask you, did the woman have the right to say no to the hugging?
Well, that's what she was trying to get support from her family, and she didn't get that.
But could she say no to the religious leader that was doing that?
This is what I told her, and I said, it's your self-respect, so you can turn around and talk to him in a private manner. Whilst the people were there, so he couldn't take advantage of her. Keep the distance and say, look, you're like my father or my grandfather. This is where the culture comes in. Please don't do this. I don't like it. I have a husband.
Thank you, Subhash.
Yeah, thank you. I probably will say there as well, there's obviously a power imbalance between a religious leader and someone in the group. And, you know, I think anyone has the right to feel safe and to put up their boundaries, especially when it comes to physical. And I'm not sure there if you were suggesting some sort of, sexual harassment, or I'm not sure. But I would also say, and this one is outside of cultural context, people need to know that they can report it to someone and can escalate that further, because there's some things that are not acceptable in any culture, and it doesn't, they might not be able to go to family, they might not be able to say it for themselves, but there's definitely always ways to report it. So talking to another senior person in that group and looking for support, because it's never okay for someone to go through that and to feel like they have to accept something like that they don't want to. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's very
I think it's
complex.
important also that before escalating it, you know for a fact that your family is not supporting you, and you escalate it, you've got a bit more deeper problem. So this is where I told her, talk to the guy and then take it from there.
Sometimes that's not possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Look,
a
a
dilemma.
it is
yeah.
very, yeah. All right. We'll just move on. Cecily and then Anne. Cecily, did you want to?
Sorry, I was just, my hair's falling down. That was all it was.
Oh, okay. Anne, do you have a scenario?
I wanted to add to the previous thing that has been mentioned regarding being angry when you speak. I come from, well, my first language is Russian. And there is a very strong cliche that I have come across from a lot of different people, that when they hear Russian speech, not Russians speaking English, but Russians speaking Russian, that to them, it comes across as people being angry. I was astounded by that. And it was happening very early on when I first came to this country. And still to this day, after being here over 25 years, I'm still getting that reaction from people. Are you angry? You were speaking to your parents and they're hearing you speak to my parents. And they're like, oh my God, what's happening between you guys? Are you fighting? That assumption to us is quite funny. It's quite humorous. We just laugh. But to these people, it's no laughing matter. They seriously think that we are fighting. And we assure them always and reassure them that no, absolutely no fighting is taking place. Everything's cool. And they think you're deceiving them, that you're trying to hide some sort of conflict going on, for their sake, because that would make them feel awkward or uncomfortable. And I'm like, no, really, we're not fighting. And it's really funny, but I've come across it, or I don't know how many, I couldn't count on two hands, maybe 100 times in the last 20 years. So, we could take offense at that, or we could just laugh it off. It's our choice how we react to those assumptions from people.
Yep.
But the sound of another foreign language can make people think that there's something wrong going on. And you have to then reassure them and put them at ease by saying, no, it's just your perception of the sound of our language.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it actually transfers to how we sound when we speak other languages. A Russian accent is apparently renowned for sounding very, very brash and very strong and very forward. And I don't even know how to describe it, but often I have no ill intention. I'm completely placid and very content and very happy. And I will say something to my friends and they're like, what's the matter? Are you unhappy?
You know something, Anne, my son accuses me of that all the time because I'm Polish Russian background as well.
Oh, okay.
And he often says to me, Mum, will you stop yelling at me? I said, I'm not yelling at you. I said, I'm trying to get a point across.
Exactly.
You know, but he doesn't understand. But
No. I
said, well, if you think I'm cranky with you,
with some people who are all Anglos, that's what we call them, as you know, Anglos.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would be trying to explain something like, shush, why are you so mad?
Yeah.
I'm not mad. I'm just trying to explain it to you.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you. Good examples. All right, last one, Mariam.
Oh, actually, I already mentioned that I came from a so different culture background. First time, it's an awkward moment. It's in a very embarrassed moment that when I faced, but at that time I didn't know. But now when I realize and I'm thinking that I was so much stupid of this kind of the reaction that I used to do. So it was, the first time when I arrived in Australia, yes, I had some friends. They wanted to, from USA, they wanted to introduce me here in Australia with another Aussie friends to help me with the environment, with my goals, with my studies, with my any kind of future goal or plan. So he was first time I'm facing with a stranger person and a man and a male, and he was a single. And our culture was that if you meet someone, the first time, they invite you to come home to introduce you with the families. This is normal. They ask you to come home instead of take you or for a coffee or something. So this is our tradition. They ask you to come home for having tea or meet friends, families like that. So I was thinking like that. And he was a single boy. And when I first time I see him, and my first question is, where is your house? Where is your home? Where is your place? And he was suddenly shocked that what she mean, that because here is different, you can't visit a person, if especially single, go to their home or go to their place to see. So he was really shocked on that moment. He suddenly called to my other friends in America, suddenly asked her that what she mean, that she is asking me to take home. And she was laughing and she said that it's all right because that's their culture is like that. So first time they introduced, if you want to see someone, they ask, invite them home. So that's how. And he, as a cross culture, so as a dealing with the culture, he was a hero at the moment when I'm realizing the way he act, the way he, instead of not realize, showing me that you're doing something not nice or some kind of, he kept quiet. He asked me, okay, yeah, please come. I went to his house. There is nobody, no family, no. And then I asked, where is your mom? Where is your sisters? Where are they? He said very nicely, very politely that I'm alone. I'm living alone by myself. So had a cup of coffee, and then I said, okay, this is this is how they invite, asking guests like that. Okay, then after that I left the place. But now, from that time, when I'm at the moment when I'm thinking of that moment, I really feel that wasn't nice. So that was my big awkward moment that I faced with the culture differences. And later and after so many years, my friend, they all started laughing at me that you was doing so many bad things. I so many kind of funny stuff that you made us so much laughing. This is yes. So I have so many different experience of this kind of differences, but luckily I gone without noticing that it's not nice. It's not, but I just gone through them, and I just learn.
Thank you, Mariam. Thanks for sharing that. It's a great example. And, we're always going to keep learning, and thank you. And it's always good when we can use humor as well. So I'm glad that you're laughing about it now. we're going to try, thank you. We're going to try an activity where I'm going to ask you to be a little bit, I guess, vulnerable, and if you're comfortable, to talk about how you react when you're offended. Because something we always worry about, well, some of us worry about offending people. You know, we don't want to hurt people. We don't want to get hurt ourselves and have our values feel threatened, and we don't want to do that to other people. So something that's really useful is to identify when you feel offended. So we're going to practice talking about that. You don't have to give any specific examples of reasons why you're offended. What I want you to do is to think about and share in the small groups how you react when you're offended. What do? Do you get angry? Do you go quiet? Do you just leave? Do you have an emotional reaction? So we're going to, if you're willing to, share with each other, and then I'll ask for people to share back. What happens for you when you get offended? So going a bit deeper. So thank you everyone for sharing so far. So we're just going to go into the breakout rooms and then we'll come back again. I will move people around a little bit. Everyone. So is there anyone who would like to share? I think, you know, we don't share other people's stories, but if you'd like to share something on how you react when you're offended, would anyone like to share?
Sure.
Yes.
We had an interesting discussion. It's not exactly about how you react, but not in terms of your physical demeanor or your language or whatever. But a point was made, which I completely agree with, is that it's your choice how you react to external stimuli. And someone offending you, very subjective term in my mind, someone saying something that doesn't agree with you or doesn't sit well with you, 100% your choice what you do with that.
True.
You can A, be quiet, turn around, walk away, never speak to that person again. That's choice number one. You can confront them politely and calmly. You can say, I'm sorry, what you just said didn't agree with me. I don't like it. Could you please explain or rephrase or take it back and apologize? You could make a scene. You could get loud and you could get offensive in response. And I think that would be the worst thing in my mind. A retaliation on the same level is probably the worst. So if someone says something I don't like, I will maybe attempt to bridge the gap. And if the person is not willing to meet me halfway, I will walk away. It's that simple. It's my choice. I've made that choice many times. I'm very strongly opinionated on certain topics, and they're political topics, they're topics on religion and things like that. People have said things that made me absolutely outraged, but I did not engage on that level. I simply said, I'm sorry, this is not going to happen, and I walked away. It's my choice.
Yeah, that's the best.
Dan, anyone else want to share? Yep, Cecily.
I'm just trying to unmute. Oh,
We've got you.
oh
Yep.
yeah, I am unmuted. Yeah, in our group there was a diverse. It was great because Helen looked up the meaning of offended on Google, and that helped us clarify what the actual feelings associated, the real feelings associated with being offended are. And then we had some variations in opinion as to how to deal with that, whether it was more thought-based and intellectual, or this is how I interpreted the discussion, or more on an emotional level. So that's pretty much how. And what I feel like this participants' interest in this group shows me that I'm not hearing anyone saying, "Oh, I just get really angry back," or because people are wanting to be thoughtful and engage. And so what I'm finding is, it seems to me that everyone's response is something more thoughtful, or wanting people to explain, or you know, a variety of things, or stepping back for some time to work it out, or just walking away, or as Irene just said, Anna, sorry, just said. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Cecily. Just one more person quickly, and then we'll keep going. Anyone else want to share?
Well, basically, in our group, there was two of us that said that we would stand up and speak out. Basically, what everyone else has said, but we're not forward. We're not scared to come forward and you know, air our views. Why we were offended? Why did they say what they said? And how we dealt with it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Irene. Okay, so I hope that was an opportunity for you all to kind of learn from each other and reflect on how you react and what that might mean if someone unintentionally offends you as well, because that's always something that is tricky. There's a difference when someone's saying something that is really, you know, direct and trying to harm versus accidental or just learning. And yeah, so just mindful of the time. So I'm just going to, so some tips for increasing your skills. So I think we've all kind of really covered it today really well. And I'm really, really grateful for how open everyone has been. It's been really, really interesting for me as well. So thank you. So being willing to seek understanding and show empathy. So when we want to try, and just like, you know, Cecily was saying, and we've shared today, when you want to try and understand different people, that is going to make such a difference. When we move past stereotypes and making those judgments is when we're going to have effective cross-cultural communication. When we practice active listening, which we've done today, you know, where we're listening to people's opinions, we're giving them space to talk, we're giving people the chance to have different views as well. You can see today we've got different opinions, we've got different views, different ways of approaching things, but we're still able to communicate with each other, and we're still able to be together and achieve something together. So it's always important to remember that, and to be open to feedback and that self-reflection. And it's okay to make mistakes. And thank you for those of you who shared you know, when you felt like you made a mistake, it's okay. And it's really good to practice sharing reflections on your culture, because then that's an opportunity for other people to learn. So never take for granted that you've got something to share that's valuable for other people to learn as well. Even if you think it's, oh, this is boring, this is what I just do every day, or, you know, I've just had an ordinary upbringing, or I'm just part of a majority group. No, there's always something that people can learn from you and your culture as well. So just quickly, some resources. So if you want to learn about some particular cultures, maybe you're volunteering with someone from a particular background, SBS has some great resources. It's called the Cultural Atlas. And when we talk about this, of course, remember there's always individual differences. We're not trying to say that people are all the same by any means, which we've demonstrated today. But if you want to learn some common shared behaviours and beliefs that's typical in some cultures, please have a look at the Cultural Atlas. And Mind Tools also has some great articles and resources on cultural communication, cultural awareness, and cultural competency. So have a look at those if you're interested in reading more. So we're almost at the end. So is there anyone who wanted to share something or ask another question? And we're going to finish on time, which is great, but I always like to make sure there's an opportunity for people to share at the end. So is there anything that you would like to make a comment or share on today?
Just a thank you. I think it's been really enlightening. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wish we had more time.
Yes.
Thank you.
It went fast, didn't it? It was interesting. I could talk about this all day. so-
Yeah, yeah.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Marvelous.
Thanks, Lauren. My comment would just be that how, apart from how much I've enjoyed this and learned a lot and such great engagement, is for me to keep taking responsibility for my own feelings and reactions. That's all I wanted to say.
A great line.
Right, thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Thanks, Joseph.
Lauren, I have a question.
Yes.
Judy. As you know, I missed the first hour, so sorry. Is there any way I can see what you shared for the
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, the individual, the small groups won't be recorded, so you won't be able to see that. But
I understand it from last time, yeah.
Yeah, so the recording will be available, the slides will be available from the website. So yeah.
Okay, terrific.
Okay.
And that's the website on my screen at the moment. Is it Imagine Tomorrow Together?
Yes, so just leap.ngo.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
That's our
Great.
Facebook.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Lauren, is there a certificate at the end of this or not?
No, we don't.
No, okay, that's okay. It's just my manager asked, that was all.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
All right, thanks everyone.